in style someday.
Hey gang, I'm Jordan David, and if you are new here, trust me, we are both surprised. Today I am so pumped because we get to talk about one of my favorite literary works of all time, Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. At just 26,500 words, this meager little story packs a lot of punch and is a great option for anybody who's kind of wanting to break into the literary fiction genre, but not sure that they're ready to put themselves through a War and Peace type long haul. If you're thinking that you can just skip the book and go straight to the movie, though, you might want to be careful, because Hollywood took some liberties with this one. Personally, I think the book is better, and here's why. Truman Capote was an American author and playwright who grew up between Alabama, where he actually was good friends with Harper Lee, author of To Kill a Mockingbird, and New York City, and he was publishing short stories, novels, and plays from 1945 until his death in 1984. Capote published Breakfast at Tiffany's in 1958, where it was well received by the literati, but it exploded in popularity with its 1961 film adaptation starring Audrey Hepburn as the story's protagonist Holly Golightly, and George Peppard as Paul Varjak, the narrator in our print story, who is affectionately referred to as Fred by Holly because he reminds her of her brother Fred. The movie really undercuts Capote's story, though, in my opinion, opting for a simple Hollywood love plot instead of what I read here, which was just an absolutely gut-wrenching tale of an it girl from humble and abusive means who escapes and cavorts with the New York elite as a means of hiding her deep-seated feelings of worthlessness and lack of belonging. Capote's plot focus is the danger in loving wild creatures, like Holly, and it complements this character development that he's given Holly very well, because it focuses around three different forms of relational love. One is the relationship between Holly and her cat. The other is between Holly and her ex-lover, husband, whatever you want to call him, Dr. Golightly, and his unresolved romantic love for Holly. And the other is the love that our narrator feels towards Holly, not romantic love. I guess you could call it platonic love, but it's more of a love and admiration for her persona. See, part of the reason Breakfast at Tiffany's became a part of the American cultural lexicon, aside from Audrey Hepburn's rendition of Moon River, was the fact that some fans of the book went to go and see the movie, and when they watched it, they were shocked to find that the narrator was being portrayed as a straight man, let alone the ultimate love interest of Holly. See, the running line was that the narrator of our story was gay, and that by creating a straight man of a gay character undermined the entire story. Now, when I read the book, I took the narrator to be completely asexual, and there's only one little bit of a hint at the end of the book that the character might be gay, but it's clear to me from the reading that the character's sexuality has nothing to do with the story at all. And the reason that the movie undermines the plot is not because the narrator is portrayed as straight, but because the idea that Holly could have settled and found fulfillment in the arms of anybody she loved, whether it was romantic or platonic, undoes all of that hardened and emotional character development that Capote writes into Golightly's character. She's unabashedly confident, she's certain of her control, she's conscious of the customs that count in high society, and aloof in all other cases. She's fearless, she's mysterious, and of course, she's beautiful. But we have a term for a person who possesses all of the traits of conventional attractiveness with none of the perceptible downside, and of course that word is fiction. So in his story, to prevent Golightly from feeling inauthentic, grounds the character through the vulnerabilities that are witnessed through the eyes of the narrator that add a sense of authenticity to her very real mystique. Golightly is invulnerable to a fault. I mean, she won't even name her cat anything other than cat because she feels that it does not belong to her. It is not hers to name, even though she feeds it, gives it a home, they have each other. She won't call it anything but cat. The only human Holly really seems to have any true investment in is not one of the many lovers who pays her cab fare, not even Jose, the Brazilian diplomat who she hopes to marry, certainly not the narrator. No, the only human that she'll give any emotional attention to is the memory of her brother Fred, who, by nature of his growing up right alongside her as her brother, would have an insight and a shared vulnerability with her that none of the people in New York City that she bumps into along the way could ever hope to gain. But by having the narrator observe Holly unobstructed strumming a few chords out on the fire escape of a different land, a different life, and seeing Dr. Golightly's heart-wrenching tale of her growing up alone on the fields to a family with nothing to eat, and him taking her in and then kind of taking advantage of her, it gives the reader supplementary knowledge that still allows us to fall for the beautiful facade that Golightly puts up, but also to understand and fall for the vulnerability underneath that she doesn't show, but that makes her real. And this is the power of fiction versus real life. It allows you to empathize with the facade that a person puts up, while also giving you an unobstructed view of the character that lies beneath. In real life, you only get what a person is willing to show you. But in the wide world of fiction, you get a chance to see how a person presents themselves, how they are through the eyes of others, and then you get to draw your own conclusions and maybe make a deeper emotional connection than you otherwise would. Of course, Breakfast at Tiffany's dramatic question logically follows from that. Where does an invulnerable creature, a bucking bronco that refuses to be broken in, or a cat that refuses to be tamed, or a completely invulnerable, damaged woman like Holly, where does an invulnerable creature belong? Dr. Golightly would argue that a wild creature belongs in the steadfast hand of a master who is willing to tame the wildness out of them. And Holly Golightly flees this point of view to New York City and tries to answer the question for herself. And what she tries to do is find wealth and power in the arms of a disinterested lover, thinking that if she has no want for any material good, then she can maybe persist without vulnerability forever. Without love, but without vulnerability. But when her primary means of financing her New York lifestyle, with passing messages for New York mobster Sally Tomato, falls through, she is faced with an ultimatum of giving up the jig and allowing herself to be vulnerable with the few relationships that she has allowed herself to even make in New York, that being one with the narrator and that being one with her cat, or to flee and live a life of wildness forever and admit that there's really no place where a wild creature belongs. And she faces an internal struggle with this for a while, but it ends in the cat and the narrator stuck in an alley while she is zooming off in a taxi to the airport. And if we understand Capote's narrative, we understand that this is the only possible answer, because he puts the answer to his dramatic question right in the book, directly quoted from the mouth of Holly Golightly. I'll read it to you. Speaking drunkenly to a bartender about why her relationship with Dr. Golightly could have never worked, Holly says, "Never love a wild thing, Mr. Bell," Holly advised. "That was Doc's mistake. He was always lugging home wild things. A hawk with a hurt wing. One time it was a full-grown bobcat with a broken leg. But you can't give your heart to a wild thing. The more you do, the stronger they get, until they're strong enough to run into the woods, or fly into a tree, then a taller tree, then the sky. That's how you'll end up, Mr. Bell. If you let yourself love a wild thing, you'll end up looking at the sky." Never love a wild thing, because it will never belong to you. What a beautiful narrative. A sad narrative, but a beautiful narrative. And it's completely lost in the movie, because the movie's answer to the dramatic question, what do you do with a wild thing? Where does it belong? The idea is still, well, it'll be hard, But if you try hard enough, you might get lucky and find George Peppard. And if you're with George Peppard, life is fixed. You know? Everybody just needs George Peppard. And that's a less beautiful story. And I think that is why people who loved the book maybe didn't love the movie. Not because the character was gay or straight, but because there was a complete loss in translation. So fuck the movie, and fuck George Peppard, honestly. If you are going to give Breakfast at Tiffany's a try, I strongly suggest you stick with the book, and I guarantee if you like setting, if you like plot, you like character, this novella has something for everybody, and it's just written masterfully. If you have read it, or if you've seen the movie, or if you've done both like I did, go ahead and leave a comment below. I love interacting with you guys. If you liked the video, please let me know by liking it, so that I can make more content like this. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. That's going to wrap it up, kids. Until next time, cheers.